Thank you for being here. We'll be starting in 5 minutes exactly. Please feel free to go and get a cup of coffee and come join us back at your seats. Thank you. Hi, everyone. We'd like to invite all our guests to please start taking their seats. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We're just about to start. First of all, we'd like to thank all of you for being here with us this evening. We're excited to welcome you this evening to the launch of Voices for Impact, Partnership for Impact's knowledge exchange platform. My name is Shantanu Mishra, and I'm a Senior Program Associate at Partnerships for Impact, and I'll be emceeing for the evening for you. I just want to start with saying that the world we live in has changed over the past decades, and so have the issues that we have to deal with. There's an urgent need to mitigate challenges arising from climate change in the form of floods, droughts, outbreaks, to name a few. This evening, through the launch of Voices for Impact, is going to be delving into discussions around the intricate nexus between climate change, gender, and health, is also going to explore how climate change and environmental changes specifically disproportionately impact women and children globally. Our discussion will also highlight the urgent need for gender-responsive strategies that address these complex challenges to ensure that the solutions that we look at are inclusive and effective in fostering climate resilience. We have a really interesting evening planned for you with a brilliant keynote address and an insightful fireside panel discussion with leading voices from the government, philanthropy, and civil society. Without further ado, I would now like to invite Anjali Nayyar, mentor to Partnerships for Impact, and to introduce Partnerships for Impact and the journey to launch our knowledge exchange platform, Voices for Impact. Ladies and gentlemen, Anjali Nayyar. Anjali Nayyar is the Executive Vice President for Global Health Strategies. Over to you, Anjali.
Thank you, Shantanu, and thank you to everyone gathered here. I'm delighted that Shantanu says I'm the mentor, but it's very difficult for me to imagine anyone mentoring Mr. C.K. Mishra and Dr. Indu Bhushan. I certainly will not even dare to say such a thing. But I do have the pleasure and honor to introduce the young and dynamic organization Partnership for Impact and its young and dynamic team. I include Dr. Indu Bhushan and Mr. Mishra in that. Primarily, Partnership for Impact uses research and analysis to impact policies and programs on select issues. But the long-term strategy, the absolute passionate dream that Partnership for Impact has is to document innovations and connect investors, funders, philanthropy, private government capital, whoever, to foster sustainable solutions and link up with the innovators. So we know that there are innovations happening across the global south, as it's called. The point is very few people know these innovations, and even the ones, the investors, the people who want to invest in them, don't know them. So our dream is to bring them together, as well as make sure that these innovations are scaled up over time. So that's a long term. To begin with, we do the research and analysis. The leadership team of Partnership for Impact includes Mr. C.K. Mishra, Dr. Indu Bhushan, and they have an advisory group that has experts from different fields. I, as Shantanu said, am the mentor and really proud to be part of it. Today, we are launching Voices for Impact, which is an independent initiative of P4I, which translates evidence into a pathway of action through dialogue. The intent is to create a vibrant hub of learning, and this is the first discussion. And this learning and sharing of insights, we hope will help bring about change. We will document some of the discussions, of course, after speaking to the panelists and everyone, into a policy brief or a paper, and that we hope will bring about the change that we want to see. Once again, thank you very much, and here's to many more insightful and exciting conversations.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you for your words. I'd just now like to move on to the next section, which is I'd like to invite Mr. C.K. Mishra to the stage to set the context for the evening. With more than 37 years of public service, Mr. Mishra has been an administrator, policymaker, and public health strategist. As former Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest, and Climate Change with the Government of India, he's led Indian negotiations at important forums such as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer, and various other multilateral events. Prior to this, he was the Secretary of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and held the additional charge of the Ministry of Ayush for some time. Mr. Mishra, we'd just like to have you on stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Shantanu. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for making it this evening to this small conversation which is kickstarting one part of P4I, which is Voices for Impact. And Anjali has given you the context of P4I, so I'll not go into that. I'll just try and speak a little about what we intend to do this evening. Yes, we'll talk about climate change as a threat multiplier. But if you look at the two tables and the names here, this is the problem that we are trying to address. That is the gender inequity in climate change. So, why are we here? We are all aware that climate change has become one of the largest and the biggest and the maybe perhaps the longest threat that humankind is going to face. And it comes in all shapes and forms. But the biggest impact that is likely to happen in days to come because of climate change is on health, well-being, and to a great extent livelihood. So we need to really understand why we need to talk about climate change. And the issue here is climate change is a factor all across the world. Who suffers? If you take geographies, it is the vulnerable population, vulnerable countries, the not so developed and developing countries which are impacted adversely by climate change. If you go within those countries, it is the population which cannot afford a decent livelihood is the one that is impacted. If you deep dive further into that community, you will find it is the children and the women who are most disproportionately affected by the adverse effects of climate change. So, and I mean, honestly speaking, any calamity, this is the net result and the impact. So what we are trying to do this evening is understand, A, why this happens, how does it play out in major societies, and what is it that collectively one can think of and do in this. You know, climate change has been there for long and scientists have been talking about it for decades. Human beings have lived in denial mode for very, very long. It took maybe a flood in Pakistan and some extreme weather events in US for some people to start talking that yes, it's for real. There are some who are globally pretty important who still think it's not real. But let's leave them aside. But the adverse impact of climate change is the central thing that we would like to talk about. This UNICEF says 1 billion children are at risk because of climate change impact. A single problem of scarcity of water can put to risk millions and millions of children because of diarrhea and other consequences. So things that have looked up in the past in terms of health indicators and parameters for children and women are likely to fall by the wayside if we do not have an effective answer to climate change. Air quality, for example, heat events. I mean, in the Indian context, these are very, very relevant things. Similarly, all reports suggest that women are disproportionately affected. In fact, there is a report which says that they are 14 times more likely to die in a climate change impact than a man. I really don't know the mathematics, but I can sense the issue in it. So this evening, 4 stalwarts will sit here to discuss what are we examining. How do we look at these inequities? Let us examine the extent of these inequities. Let us analyze our actions so far and what we've been able to do. And let us collectively look at a possibility of a solution which we can work through some partnership, some collaboration, some funding, some philanthropy, whatever it is. What is it that we need to get at? And all this is happening, but this vulnerable section, the women and children, do not still have a global role to play in policy making. So one who is impacted most has the least say in policy parameters. That is another issue that we need to keep in mind. So this evening is not just about explaining climate change. There are n number of experts who've done that, and we know that very well. This evening is trying to find a solution to the problem, understand it better, and perhaps end up looking at a partnership which can really have a solid impact. Thank you very much for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.